Thank you very much for being with us. The UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer is fighting for his political survival after a disastrous set of results in the local elections for his Labour Party last week. Dozens of Labour lawmakers are calling on Sir Keir to resign, though several ministers publicly spoke of their support for Sir Keir as they left a cabinet meeting this Tuesday. The reported favourite of the Parliamentary Labour Party is Andy Burnham, former minister, current mayor of Manchester, and therefore still ineligible to challenge because he isn't an MP. Yesterday, a leading voice in Labour, Angela Rayner, gave her support to Burnham, saying it was a travesty that his return to the Commons was blocked in February, the by-election there in Gorton, Denton and East Manchester. Burnham not approved by Labour's National Executive Committee, and it's understood Prime Minister Starmer reportedly backing that call. Well, to sum up then, 4 ministers have quit. In the last hour, there's been a dramatic twist with 100 Labour MPs signing a letter supporting the PM. Our report by Delana de Souza.
Is it over for Keir Starmer?
Lawmakers leave a high-stakes cabinet meeting at Downing Street after the British Prime Minister resisted calls to go. Keir Starmer digging in his heels as over 70 Labour MPs urged him to step down. Despite this, some members of his cabinet voiced their support.
Prime Minister resign!
What did everyone say when Keir Starmer said a leadership race had not been triggered?
Well, it's the fact. We've had a very purposeful cabinet meeting talking about the big issues facing our economy and society. Nothing has been triggered.
And look, this government will do what we were elected to do, which is serve the British people. The Prime Minister has my full support in this. And let me just say this. There is a process to challenge the leader. No one has made that challenge.
While Keir Starmer remains focused on governing, senior cabinet ministers have reportedly advised the Prime Minister to announce a plan for his exit. They include current Deputy Prime Minister and the country's Interior Minister. Out on the streets of the British capital, meanwhile, Londoners are unconvinced Starmer will last.
Well, there seems to be a lot of pressure on him at the moment from all angles, so he probably won't survive.
I think he's on a sticky wicket, and it looks like the Labour MPs maybe want him out.
He should definitely go. He won't stay. I think he might survive the week.
Keir Starmer's job has been in jeopardy after it emerged he failed to heed warnings not to appoint Peter Mandelson, UK ambassador to the United States, over his links with Jeffrey Epstein. Calls for his ouster have grown louder since Labour's drubbing in local elections. At the start of the week, the Prime Minister pledged to prove his doubters wrong. But while he doubles down to remain in the job, his hold as leader of the Labour Party will likely remain on shaky ground.
Delana de Souza with that report. Let's broaden our analysis and welcome to the programme Quentin Peel, journalist, former foreign editor of the Financial Times. In fact, that description just basically scratches the surface. This is a man with great depth of knowledge, as we will now discover. Quentin, pleasure to see you as always, sir. Can Sir Keir Starmer ride this one out? That was my first question, but it's difficult to say, isn't it, in terms of what is developing, and it is fast moving at the moment.
It is, and I think he's putting up quite a fight. Yesterday, I think I felt that he was probably absolutely going to go within 24 hours, and today he seems to be hanging on in there. And the key to the whole thing is that there isn't a very obvious alternative right away, and I think a lot of people in the government are scared that actually to have a prolonged and difficult leadership race would be very bad for the country. So the party is split.
Party is split. Andy Burnham, for many people, is regarded as the man who should be Labour leader. But of course, Andy Burnham isn't an MP. That is a major problem.
It is, and it would take some little time for him to become an MP, even if the way was cleared. He's the mayor of Manchester. He's a very popular mayor of Manchester as things go, and I think he is the man who would be most popular both inside and outside the Labour Party. But he's rather stuck, and so until he can really mount a challenge, it looks as if Keir Starmer might succeed in hanging on in there. The alternative is Wes Streeting, the health minister, who could stand against him. But I think he's nervous about doing that when the party is so divided on what they want to do. So my inclination at the moment is possibly Starmer will succeed in hanging on until the autumn, when they can have a more sensible leadership race at the time of the Labour Party conference, which would be quite normal. It would be very abnormal in Labour terms for him to be challenged while he's still Prime Minister.
One has to ask the question, how has it come to this? Because Keir Starmer led Labour into the election in July 2024 and came out of that election with a huge majority, winning by a massive landslide. What has gone wrong?
He won that huge majority with a surprisingly low vote. And the key to the last election was not a triumph of the Labour Party, it was a disaster for the Conservative Party. And as you may well remember, we went through about 5 prime ministers in a very short time, and the Conservative Party was in a complete mess. They'd had Boris Johnson, he'd had to quit. They had Liz Truss, the markets didn't trust her, and so on. They had Rishi Sunak, and basically it fell apart. So Labour won with only 30% of the vote, but well over about 60% of the seats. So that was a remarkable victory, but it was a very dangerous one for Keir Starmer because he had a big majority. And the problem for a British government, if the majority is too big, their members of parliament are much more inclined to rebel against the prime minister or want to go their own way. And I think that is rather what's happened to the Labour Party. It's not seemed to be a good, coherent government with a very clear programme. It's been a nervous government with a leader in Keir Starmer who doesn't have charisma and doesn't have great coherence on television and so on. He's dull, and that, I think, is a big problem for the party and why they did so badly in the local elections last week.
Indeed. Errors in policy over things like benefit cuts, over cuts to heating supplements for those who are taking an old age pension. That's men over 67, if I remember correctly, women over 65. You'll correct me if I'm wrong, I know, Quentin. Clearly, there have been some moves there by the Labour Party, which I think left some of the grassroots Labour supporters thinking, well, why have we voted for this? This isn't what we wanted from our kind of government. So problems there. But on the international stage, sorry, go ahead, Quentin.
Well, no, I was just going to say on those things, part of the problem is that Keir Starmer kept doing things that proved unpopular and then turning round and reversing them. So he hasn't looked to be a strong leader on the domestic front.
On the international front, I was about to say that he's had some kind of a, in inverted commas, reprieve with the way he's handled Donald Trump and the Iran situation.
Yes, what he's done in standing up to Donald Trump and not going along with the Americans in their attack on Iran has been very much more popular, about the most popular thing he's done recently. He doesn't have a perfect track record on international affairs. Within his own party, his continuing support for Israel and refusal to really criticize Israel's bombing of Gaza and so on has been pretty unpopular in the party. So he has come out of this looking like an unpopular prime minister across the board in his own party, but clearly with people leaving the party and voting for the Reform UK party, the far-right party, and the Greens on the left. So last week they got caught from the left and from the right and really suffered a dreadful result.
Indeed, bleeding voters on both sides of their agenda in many ways, as you just pointed out. You mentioned reform. Nigel Farage, of course, regarding Iran, probably would have been in Donald Trump's right-hand pocket going forward, wouldn't he? He'd have been very gung-ho and going into that, regardless of what the country thought, if you were Prime Minister.
Yes, but he's trying. he's trying to distance himself because he does realise that that's actually very unpopular in Britain. And I think that the Reform has very much to prove itself yet as the sort of party that could be a coherent and steady national government. It's winning seats in local elections, but it really hasn't picked up, even though the polls suggest they are running in front, it hasn't picked up the sort of image that would suggest that Nigel Farage would be a popular prime minister. His popularity is nearly as low as that of Keir Starmer. So you have a situation where the electorate seems to be saying a plague on all your houses, but in doing so, they're voting for those who are the parties of permanent opposition like Reform and the Greens, and not for the traditional Labour and Conservative parties.
Quentin Peel, we need to leave it there, but please promise us you'll come back again because your insight is always invaluable. Quentin Peel, former foreign editor at the Financial Times, journalist, goes without saying, and a man whose knowledge of the British political scene and the international political scene is massive. Thank you, sir, for being with us and giving us your insight. Quentin, pleasure speaking to you.